What is going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving. It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. We're here to preview and predict that Black Friday game for our Miami Dolphins against the New York Jets. We're going to be talking latest team news, injury updates. We got a bunch of viewer questions to get to, so we're going to tackle all of that in today's video. Before I jump into that, though, I got to hear from you. Your final score predictions. How do you see Friday's game against the Jets playing out? Go ahead. Drop those in the comments. But we got some recent news. That's good news. And in my opinion, it's kind of deserved and it's kind of expected. But Jalen Ramsey was named the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. You already know what he did last week against the Raiders. 2 interceptions, including the game-sealing interception. Solid coverage in crucial points of that game. Like I said, this award felt obvious and well-deserved to me. Leads the team with 3 interceptions in 3 games played. Dude is an outright difference maker. I talked more about him in the first Dolphins Jets preview video. If you missed that, go ahead and check that one out. Let's talk a little bit about the updates on the injury front, because we saw Durham Smythe and Robert Jones as DNPs on Tuesday, and we saw an absolute pile of players that were listed as limited. Now, that practice was a walkthrough, so it was more so an estimation as to what their status would have been had there been a practice. However, Wednesday's practice featured every single player on the active roster in at least some capacity. So that is good news. Devon Achane was limited, but it does sound like he has a real good shot of playing on Friday. But honestly, they're going to have to make a call on this. As of recording it, they haven't made a call yet, but they're going to have to make a call on his status for that game, because they may need to elevate Darrynton Evans, who was added to the team's practice squad. So in the event that he can't go, look for Darrynton Evans to potentially be called up. But expect Jeff Wilson to be active this week, along with Raheem Mostert as well. Let's talk about the offensive line real quick as well, because Austin Jackson, Lester Cotton appear to be, thank God, in a good position to be able to go on Friday. Obviously, on the offensive line, biggest question remains Robert Hunt. Now, there is talk about him potentially being active, but only using him in case of an emergency. Now, we saw the team do that earlier this year with Connor Williams, where they had him up, but Liam Eichenberg still started at center. That may potentially be the case for Robert Hunt this week. We'll see how that comes in. Speaking of that as well, before I jump into the questions, I saw a question come in right before starting to record this, so I didn't get it added to the list, but it was basically about which players you'd consider resting. And quite honestly, at this point, I think Robert Hunt maybe falls into that category. Get him healthy. Get this offensive line in general as close to 100% as possible for the stretch run of the season, where we're really pushing not only for a playoff spot, but for that higher seeding as well, to try to get as many home playoff games as possible. Let's jump into those questions, though. First one here is coming from, I got to get this thing off the screen here. There we go. Has the offense lost its creativity from the first few weeks? Seems very pedestrian lately. I've been thinking about the offense and their output recently, because obviously, as we know, it hasn't looked quite as clean. My theory when it comes to the offense right now is that we're seeing Mike McDaniel change up the game plan. It almost feels kind of on like a week-to-week basis. Throughout the season, the bread and butter has been the heavy kind of pass game over the middle of the field. So we've obviously seen that featured. But then we kind of went through a stretch where we were seeing more pop passes and wide receiver end arounds. And then we kind of transformed into some screens, get the ball out to the playmakers quick, let them produce after the catch. We've seen a little bit of everything, and it sort of feels like Mike McDaniel is just trying to put so much out on tape to make the Dolphins harder to game plan for. So I do think we eventually really hone in on what we do the best. We go back to our bread and butter. We'll get back to some more of that creative play calling where we get those chunk yardage gains. But right now, it kind of just feels more strategic than anything. Next one here from Dean. How close is Chris Brooks to coming back from IR? If he isn't close, is there a free agent running back you think the Dolphins may reach out to? So it kind of sounds like Chris Brooks may need another week or two before they would consider bringing him back. The other issue right now, as it pertains to guys coming off the IR, is finding a roster spot, because obviously you're going to have to release a guy at that point in time to bring anyone back from IR. So part of what may be holding it on is just seeing over these next week or two, if anyone else gets hurt, if anyone else gets put on IR, then you wouldn't necessarily need to release anyone by bringing him back early if we don't need him, if he's not quite ready to go. So the idea would be if someone else got hurt, you put him on IR, you could bring Chris Brooks back then. Regardless, like I said, we should see Jeff Wilson active on Friday. He was a healthy scratch last week against the Raiders. And then in regards to free agent running backs, quite honestly, I didn't get a chance to dive too much into that. I know Darrell Henderson just recently got released. But if anything right now, potentially look at Darrington Evans, who was added to the practice squad. I had a couple of thoughts and questions come into this, so I listed a couple of the names. Is the Dolphins offense relying on Tyreek Hill too much? And then would we benefit by spreading out the targets more? So Tyreek Hill, fourth in the NFL in targets. And the funny thing is two of the three guys ahead of him have played a full more game. So yeah, Tyreek's getting targeted at a very high clip. Now, there's two ways to look at this. One, you say, you know what, it's Tyreek Hill. Let's target him. He's one of the best players in the NFL. Let's let him create. The other way to look at it is spread out the targets more, especially because we have all these capable playmakers. And then you make the defense really need to pay attention to others, which theoretically, if you got to pay attention to a Waddle or an Achane or Cedric Wilson, whoever it is, that should free up some space for Tyreek Hill. So I do see both sides of it. And quite honestly, I would like to see our offense not need to rely on Tyreek so much. And I feel that way for a couple of reasons. One, like what I just said, keep the defense guessing. Two, keep Tyreek healthy. If he's not getting targeted, if he's not getting as many touches, he's taking less hits. We have capable guys. That'd be the other thing. We've got Waddle, we got Achane, we got Craycraft, we got Wilson. We've got capable guys. And then also, if Tyreek were to get hurt, if he were to miss extended period of time, we need to be able to operate. And there's stats out there about Tua doing fine with Tyreek off the field, but granted, that's a very small sample size. If we had to go multiple weeks without Tyreek Hill, this offense would need a different identity. It would need somewhere else to go. So yeah, I don't mind that idea at all. Let's go into the next one here. From Benjamin, would it be smart for the Dolphins to play more conservatively on offense this week, attempt to limit turnovers, trust the defense to take care of business against the incapable offense of the Jets? I love the wording there, incapable offense of the Jets. I do hear that strategy, especially but anything is kind of possible in the NFL. I don't want to say that we could potentially lose this game, but quite honestly, we've seen teams favored by even more than we are in this game that have lost in the NFL. So for that, I don't want to go too far away from the norm, but what I would do is maybe not debut anything too new or creative that maybe you could save for later in the season when you really need it. But at the same time, I think this offense really wants to, more than anything, put a full game together, sort of get right. If you saw Hard Knocks, you saw Tua after that game against the Raiders, kind of going up to the defense and saying like, "Hey, great game, guys. You guys won that game for us." And then going over to the receivers and basically told each and every one of them, "I need to be better." And it's funny because if you look at just the stats alone, you threw for 300 plus yards, you had multiple touchdowns. You're like, man, as Dolphins fans, we need our quarterback to be better. We've wanted those kind of numbers for years. But if you actually watch the game, you're like, yeah, he could have been better. And he talked about it in his post-game media availability, saying, I hold myself to a higher standard. I know what I'm capable of. I know I can do better. So, yeah, he put up the gaudy numbers, but he did have an interception. He had some missed passes that he typically completes. He had the fumble. He knows he can play better as well. So, yeah, long-winded answer to say maybe just don't debut anything too new, but I see the offense trying to really put one together here. Is playing against a third-string quarterback really a better matchup for us than playing against Zach Wilson? Being a Dolphins fan and always hoping for the worst for the New York Jets, this question kind of just made me a little bit warm and tingly inside. It was a great question. I really liked it. But honestly, you could make a case that maybe Boyle's even a harder matchup because there's less film of him out there, and with him making his first start of the season, you're not really quite sure what the offensive game plan is going to be. Whereas with Zach Wilson, you sort of knew what you were going to get into. So no, it may not be better, it may not be easier, but quite honestly, with how our defense has been playing recently, it shouldn't matter. It honestly shouldn't matter. We should be able to handle this Jets offense like we talked about. They've scored 9 touchdowns in 10 games. Yeah, it shouldn't matter who the quarterback is. We should be okay. All right, let's jump into the prediction. I got the Dolphins winning 24-10. And honestly, this is one of the smaller offensive outputs that I've predicted as a final score here, because I do think the Jets defense can still present us with some issues, some problems, especially where their offense hasn't been clicking the way that it was earlier in the season. But like I said in the first preview video, take advantage of that Jets run defense. It's like what, the third or fourth statistical worst run defense in the league. If you can get that established, rely on the run game, that's going to open things up for Tua and this passing game. So our offense, if we can get up early, make the Jets become a little bit more one-dimensional, put a lot on Tim Boyle's shoulders, then I think our defense can get rolling. We can just have kind of like a very fluid and efficient offensive game. But yeah, defensively, keep everything in front of you. Don't allow the big play. Don't allow the big play like we did to Davante Adams. If you make the Jets have to work for touchdowns, it's not going to work. We put the stat out in the preview video that they've scored one touchdown in the last 46 possessions, and their previous 3 touchdowns before that were all on one-play drives. They can't sustain an offense. We really have no excuses to lose this game. But like I said before, it's a divisional game. It's a short week. It's a road game. Anything is possible. So I'm not chalking this up as like the Dolphins are guaranteed to win. But I tell you what, if we don't win, it's going to be a sad day. It's going to ruin the rest of the football watching for the weekend for me. But that is what I've got. Those are my thoughts, my prediction. Go ahead, drop your thoughts and prediction in the comments. Let's carry on the conversation there up until game time. That is what I've got. Like I said, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with your family and friends and whoever the hell else you want to enjoy time with. Until then, Dolphins fans, fins up.